Hi everyone! Today I wanted to share with you some cultural differences that I've noticed between the UK and South Korea. Quick disclaimer, this video is not meant to bash either country. I love both my home country and South Korea, and I feel very grateful and fortunate that I get to live here in South Korea. A quick background about myself. I was born in the UK near Birmingham. I lived in the same quiet neighbourhood for 23 years of my life before I made the bold decision to move to South Korea as an English teacher. This is where I met my wonderful husband, and to cut a very long story short, after a bit of back and forth, we got married earlier this year and I moved to South Korea, so now I live here. If you'd like to know more in-depth details on how I moved here and all of that stuff, then I will link a video up above that you can go and watch. But in total, I've lived in South Korea for just over 2 years. I feel like I did a lot of personal growth during my time in South Korea, so this country will always hold a very special place in my heart. And here are some cultural differences that I've noticed between South Korea and the UK. So the first thing I noticed was actually the difference in the food/eating culture in Korea compared to in the UK. I already sort of knew this before I even landed in Korea, because when I was doing some research on basically how not to offend Korean people, this was one of the things that I actually came across, was eating etiquette and how important food is to Korean culture. So in the UK, if you go out for a meal with your family or your friends or whoever, if you order a meal, then it's your individual meal and everyone just eats the dish that they had ordered. So basically, if I had ordered fish and chips at the pub and my dad had ordered a burger, then I would eat just my fish and chips and my dad would eat just his burger. We wouldn't really share our dishes between us.
Have you thought about my boners?
Well, yes.
Right, but they're my boners. You want a boner? Order a boner. That's why I've ordered 2 boners.
But here in South Korea, a lot of dishes are served amongst numerous people. So typically you will order dishes for the entire table to share. You will also see that in a lot of Korean restaurants, they have a grill in the middle of the table that everybody grills on, and everybody will just eat the same food. So basically all of the food that you order just gets put in the middle of the table and everyone just dips into the same food. Also, as is typical in Korea, you usually get a lot of bantan or side dishes included for free, and again, these just get placed in the middle for everybody to share. I will say that although this was something I was aware of before moving, it did still come as a little bit of a culture shock when I ate out with my co-workers for the first time. I still kind of had the UK mindset of I should have my own food. So I think the mentality of everybody just sharing the same food took a while for me to get used to, but once I did, I actually now prefer sharing my food. Like overall, I really enjoy the sharing culture around food and how everybody just gets to try a little bit of everything. Also, it creates kind of a bonding experience for everybody around the table, because you know, you can discuss the food because you're all eating the same thing. So it does create discussion and a bit of a bonding experience, and I've come to really love that actually. One thing that ties into this too is that dishes in Korea are made with the intention of sharing in mind. So even if you go to a hotel, like I remember this one time at a hotel when my parents came to visit, everybody was trying to order a pasta dish each, but the pasta dishes were made to serve at least 2 or 3 people. So the portion sizes are massive on purpose because they're designed for sharing. So that's something to bear in mind if you ever come to Korea. Don't go ordering dishes as if they're going to be individual portion sizes, because in a lot of cases they're not. They're designed for sharing, and you will just end up with a pasta dish that's meant to serve like 3 people. But also, that's just something that maybe you should check with whoever's taking your order before you order, that the dish that you're ordering is an individual portion size or if it's for sharing. But 9 times out of 10, it will be made with sharing in mind. So that's just something that you have to check before you order. Leading on from food is, of course, drinking culture. So I'm from the UK and we have the ability to drink quite a lot. I kind of thought that because I was British and already had come from a background where there was quite a big drinking culture, I wouldn't be that shocked when I came to Korea. However, being from the UK, drinking is more of a social activity that you tend to do with your family and your friends. I would say that in the UK you don't really go out drinking alcohol with your co-workers and your boss unless you have developed a close friendship with some of the people you work with. Once you clock out of work, you do not want to spend time with those people. Like you want to go home. You're not going to go out drinking with them. Another thing that I noticed was that Korean alcohol is generally very, very cheap compared to in the UK, especially soju, which is Korean's hard liquor. That is very, very cheap and very affordable here. So I would say that drinking alcohol is just generally more accessible in South Korea than it is in the UK. Just to give you an idea of how cheap it truly is, at most convenience stores you can buy 1 bottle of soju for the equivalent of around £1. And trust me, you only need like 1, max 2 bowls of soju to get absolutely hammered.
Brilliant.
Leading on from the fact that alcohol in South Korea is generally more accessible, there are also a lot more drinking rules and drinking etiquette in South Korea. First of all, when someone is pouring a drink for you, you have to receive the drink. So if somebody older than you is pouring an alcoholic drink for you, you have to receive it with 2 hands. And people who are older or more superior than the person who's pouring a drink for them still receive it. I've noticed that they usually just touch their glass at least. It is usually the younger/youngest person who will pour the drinks for everybody. And you must do this with 2 hands or with 1 hand tucked. So you either pour it with both hands like this, or you tuck 1 hand underneath your, kind of like underneath your armpit area. Also, if you are younger/less superior, then you must cover your glass with your hand and turn away like this. Just a side note though, this is only with alcohol. You don't have to do this with all drinks. There's also some subtle etiquette nuances that I came across. Like I heard that as you're pouring, the logo of the bottle has to be facing up, and you also have to cover the logo of the bottle with your hand. This is something I've heard of, but I've actually never really seen this one in practice, so I think it's more of a subtle nuance that a lot of people don't really tend to do very often. In the UK, there aren't as many drinking etiquettes that I'm aware of, at least. I could be wrong, maybe in the upper class there are drinking etiquettes and drinking rules, but for peasants like myself, the only thing I can think of is that people do tend to refill your glass for you when it's empty. But I know that this is definitely the case in Korea too, to the point where people in Korea do say that if you're not that good with alcohol/handling your liquor, then you should always keep a small amount of soju in your shot glass so that it doesn't just keep getting refilled by people. The next cultural difference that I wanted to talk about is politeness. From my experience, both South Korea and the UK are generally quite polite countries, but they definitely have different ideas about what politeness is and what it looks like. The biggest difference that I've noticed is that in the UK, people are generally very polite to everybody that they meet, even complete and total strangers. But in Korea, I've noticed that people generally tend to be quite cold towards total strangers, but they go above and beyond with people that they know and care about. Once you develop a relationship with a Korean person, they are the most kind and caring people you will ever meet. So in the UK, for example, if you bumped into someone on accident, even if you just grazed their shoulder, you would say sorry most of the time. If anything, people in the UK say sorry way too much.
Sorry. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Don't hurt me. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I'm on the pavement.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry.
Whereas in Korea, that's not really what I've experienced. I think it ties into how Korean culture is generally very fast-paced and very busy. But if somebody just knocks into you in the subway or something, or like they're running and they just happen to like bump your shoulder as they run past you, they're not gonna usually say, I'm sorry. However, if they did something really big to you, like if they bumped into you and like knocked you to the ground or something, then they would usually say, I'm sorry. At least that's what I've experienced. Usually if somebody just bumps into me, they don't say anything, but in one instance I had someone push me on the subway into one of the metal bars, and that person did say sorry. So in my experience, if they do something that looks like it actually hurt, then they will say sorry. Also, holding doors open is just a general courtesy in the UK. Most people will hold a door open for you. In fact, I've had many cases in the UK where someone's held a door open for me and I'm nowhere near them, and I have to run to actually get to the door in time.
Wait for me, I got little legs!
But in South Korea, many times I've been standing directly behind someone and the person who's in front of me has just let the door slam like directly in my face.
I can't believe you've done this.
But I do feel that this is generally getting much better these days. People generally hold the door open for me much more these days, especially the younger generation. In addition to saying sorry way too much, British people also say thank you far too much. I think sorry and thank you are probably the most used words in the UK. But this kind of carried over to Korea, so when I moved here, I would constantly say 감사합니다, 감사합니다, like all of the time to everybody. And this led to a lot of people looking at me very weirdly.
You were going to Disneyland!
Especially in restaurants, I used to just say it over and over and over again. Even now, to be honest with you, I still struggle to not say it all of the time. So whenever the worker would bring over like another set of pantan and side dishes, I would say 감사합니다. And the same for whatever food I was eating, I would just say it over and over. Whereas I've noticed Korean people, they usually say thank you once, maximum twice. Like usually when the worker has brought all of the food out, then they will say 감사합니다. Also, when I was working as an English teacher here in Korea, the parents were so sweet. They were very kind and very polite to me. You know, they would always give me flowers, gift cards, handwritten cards just saying that they're really grateful for me teaching their child. I felt like I received a lot of kindness and warmth generally from a lot of Korean people who had formed at least some sort of relationship with me. One of my co-teachers, when I got sick, she actually went out on her lunch break and bought me every cold medication I think that they had. She bought me typical pill medication, she bought me those little vitamin C drinks, she got me those little forehead patches, and she even made me hot tea and brought it to my classroom for me. I still think about her a lot. She was such a sweet lady. And this is what I mean by how once they form a relationship with you, they are just the most caring people. So that's something that I really love about Korean people. They just have this warmth and this caring attitude towards you once they form that relationship with you. The next topic that I wanted to discuss is the difference between fashion here in South Korea compared to in the UK. I don't want to make sweeping generalizations here, but in general, no, just kidding. These are just things that I've noticed. Here in Korea, people do care more about their overall appearance and how other people perceive them. Most people that I've seen in Korea have really good hair, really good skin, really good style. Even the men they just look so presentable all of the time. Even when they dress casually, they still look really good. They always just look like they've put effort in. I do think that this sort of stems from the fact that Koreans, I think, care more about how people perceive them than people in the UK do. Again though, this is more of a general statement. Of course, there's going to be outliers, but I think Koreans do tend to look way more presentable on average than people in the UK. Koreans do also tend to follow trends a lot more than people in the UK do. So for example, right now, really oversized, baggy clothing is very fashionable here, and I see that on about 80% of people, I would say. Whereas in the UK, I think not that many people actually tend to follow or keep up with fashion trends, and it's much more about individual style and individual taste. I think people don't really keep up with the trends as much because in the UK I don't think people generally care as much about how other people perceive them, and I think this is both a bad thing and a good thing. I think it's bad because in the UK you do actually see people out in their dressing gowns and pajamas and things like that, just walking around, and obviously like seeing someone walking around in a dressing gown and pajamas and their slippers is not really the nicest thing to see when you're out. Whereas in Korea I have never ever seen anybody not at least look presentable. But I will say that on average in the UK you definitely see more variation in style and also more variation in colour. Some quick bonus things that I just want to add really quickly at the end here. Do not hug people in Korea, even people that you are friends with and know. Do not hug them. You will successfully completely shut down a Korean if you hug them. And for all of my fellow Europeans, don't even think about air kisses. Korean pizza. Korean pizza is a wonder to the world. It can be extremely wild in terms of toppings. I've seen chicken tenders on pizza, I've seen fries, potatoes, sweet potato, pasta, and even honey. There are more Western pizza restaurants here in Korea, but be very aware that there are some crazy toppings. Ice Americanos were an absolute enigma to me. Ice Americanos are not a thing in the UK. Americanos are always hot. Also in the UK we have a black Americano and a white Americano, and my parents' go-to is always a white Americano, usually from Costa. But basically this is just a black Americano with a tiny little bit of milk added. When my parents came to Korea to visit, they really struggled with coffee orders here because they wanted the taste of a white Americano. So I know what you were gonna say in response to that. It's, why don't you just order a cafe latte? Well, young grasshopper, the reason why is cafe lattes have a lot of milk in them. Theft, or the lack thereof. So in Korea, honestly, I have no fear at all about any of my personal belongings being stolen at any given time. Leave your stuff in a cafe for 2 hours, no problem. It'll still be there when you get back. Drop your credit card on the ground that has no pin, by the way. So somebody could just pick that up and like just use everything that you had. Again, no problem. It will have been handed in. Obviously, I'm not speaking from experience here because I'm clearly not ditzy enough to ever drop my credit card on the ground. But yes, said credit/debit card that has no PIN number required to use will have been handed in. So these are the cultural differences that I've experienced between South Korea and the UK. Please let me know in the comments down below of any cultural differences or culture shocks that you might have experienced. And if you would like to see more Korea related content from me, then please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!